Yo, how's it going everybody? It's Tachyon and welcome back to the channel. And on today's episode we're looking at the vertical shoot 'em up Bullet Soul, developed by Tachyon and published by 5PB, released to the Xbox 360 in 2011. Infinite Burst would get a release 3 years later in 2014, and both games receive a port to the Xbox One in September of 2016 by Mages. Both would later receive a PC port as well in the following April of 2017. This is an awesome vertical shooter that has some conventions for newcomers and veterans alike, with its fast-paced gameplay and balanced mechanics for players of all skill levels to get into. We'll go over the general synopsis and look at both titles, which are somewhat similar, even though Infinite Burst does have some extra modes and gameplay changes. So what's the story on this one though? The Mecha World Empire is on their conquest of space itself until 3 pilots unite and step up to throttle their ambitions. The trio will blast waves of enemy fleets through the solar system and potentially have the galaxy as the prize if they succeed in crumbling this empire. That's really it. Bullet Soul doesn't take up much time with explanations before throwing you into 5 stages of chaotic gunfire and massive enemies with one of the game's 4 playable pilots, each with their own strengths and abilities. Both titles have multiple modes to play through, including their normal arcade modes with free play, along with version B, which loops and adds an additional and very powerful character, coincidentally also named Loop. Infinite Burst in turn has a normal mode that feels more like the original's B mode, with its instead of collecting and stacking bomb attacks, this is now on a chargeable gauge, which is fueled by coins that fill and extend the attack time. Timed out properly, you'll straight up demolish everything on screen as long as you keep the red coins coming, but taking damage will knock you out of the burst mode and also take away some health. Burst mode can also be chained into a screen clear bomb attack if you really want to get spicy with it. The Musou mode starts you out with weapons at max and constantly recharging burst meter, which is pretty intense visually. The objective overall is a relatively simple one: shoot down as many enemies as possible, and depending on mode of play, either one or several hits can come rather quickly. Bullet Soul does however have a unique mechanic of enemy fire disappearing once you shoot down the enemy that fired the shot. This also applies to the boss battles, in which destroying certain parts can also erase enemy gunfire. This game does get wild with the amount of enemies and fire patterns, but you've got a solid arsenal at your disposal. Each character can switch between 2 modes of fire, one being shots that have a wider spread allowing you to move around faster, and a concentrated shot that is more powerful, which can lock onto enemies but in turn slows you down. Switching between fire can dish out some serious damage with certain characters and make light work of most enemies once you figure out a rhythm. Graphics wise, with a variety of modes and Infinite Burst being a revision and overall of sorts, the graphics are all over the shop here. The original version really serves as the base for the other modes featured in the first title and Infinite Burst. Sprites and animations look very smooth here, along with enemies and level environments having a lot of nice animations and secrets to discover. Both versions have the same 5 levels, with its B version and the whole of Infinite Burst adding more gameplay elements as well as more enemies and fire patterns, along with a couple palette swaps for certain parts of stages throughout the campaign. This is a flashy shoot 'em up that, beyond the base mode, only gets crazier with the amount of bullets and enemies on screen at a time. And artist Akio Watanabe has some quite frankly amazing work seen throughout. Boss and sub-boss designs here are all massive, with a lot of moving parts and weak areas to find in order to defeat them as quickly and efficiently as possible. The mechanical hedgehog boss is a pretty dope one, but at first it takes a minute to figure out where the weak points are until you see the orbiting options near its head. Once you figure out boss attack patterns and weak points, you'll have a front row seat to quite the fireworks show on just about every encounter. Level designs as a whole have multiple areas with a lot of destructible elements in each stage, which grant bonuses the more of them that you find. The level of detail seen on the stages here is also pretty dope, with everything that's usually going on beneath it all. Like stage 1, with the traffic casually going about its business as an interplanetary war just unfolds above them, to the deep space galaxy bands that carries a lot of really good looking environments. The colors here are pretty loud in sections, and Infinite Burst Musou mode is literally a barrage of colors since all your weapons start out maxed, so neither title is really short on visual flair, considering the base game is the slowest and most palette neutral of the lot. That's not to say it doesn't all look good, but you'll certainly notice the evolution of the game through each mode, and Infinite Burst just turns everything up to 20 in general. Sound wise, these games all cook, with some booming sound effects and even more burly soundtrack composed by Resonator, which is the duo of Kenji Ito and Kota Takahashi, which both have quite the pedigree in soundtrack compositions. The soundtrack has a Guilty Gear feel with its wailing guitars and more double bass than you would expect at a glance. There's even a couple tracks here that have a vibe similar to Ikaruga, which I can always appreciate. The music is beyond hype, along with the effects work is a solid blend of audible delight. Sound effects work here is pretty stout from the get, and explosions of all sizes can be seen and heard here, especially with a stereo sound system or a headset. These games in the audio department straight up bang and will likely fuel the urge to want to run the game again with just how driving challenging the audio is. From vanilla Bullet Soul to Infinite Burst, again, you'll notice subtle tweaks in the versions of tracks being rearranged slightly, but nothing ever gets replaced except for the opening and ending credit themes. It's pretty dope across the board, to be fair, and the in-game tracks are pretty dang catchy. Overall, the original Bullet Soul and Infinite Burst are both awesome vertical shoot 'em ups that are very colorful and fun games to learn. Both have a learning curve, but also have mechanics that can assist in showing more novice players of some fun gateway experiences into bullet hell games while being very challenging to veterans to score chase and achievement hunt, both while having a blast. Graphically, you'll see a shift between the two versions, but essentially, if you want the best all-around game, just grab Infinite Burst since it has a bit more in the way of content. If you want something more bite-sized, both titles also offer Caravan and Boncho modes, so there's a good bit on offer with these games either way. Bullet Soul and Infinite Burst get an 8 out of 10. While both are recommended, Infinite Burst is highly recommended for vertical shoot 'em up and arcade game fans. These games get wild and have a variety of options to get stuck into. These are both fairly cheap to pick up as well on Xbox Live and Steam for the PC. If you're into shoot 'em ups and want something to check out, this is definitely not a bad place to start by any means. It'd be awesome to see what other titles Tachyon and 5PB have in their arsenal, because these games were really fun to run through, repeatedly even. And I thank you again for checking out this video. If you find these videos helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad you can use it as a resource. Check back often, we'll have more reviews and commentaries coming up in the near future. But until then, take it easy, stay safe out there, and I'll see you on the next one.